So welcome. This is the daily call. It is October 5th, at least in much of the world, and we are very pleased to have with us Meir Rubin to speak today from Israel. He is the founder and head of Kohelet, an organization that advises the government on a wide variety of matters, and in particular has been working extremely hard on advising the government on the COVID response. Um, I don't know if anybody has something that they would like to raise before we start, but I think Mayor has a lot that I think we would like to hear him say, particularly about the response in Israel and some of the unique or distinct aspects of that response. So let me turn it over to Mayor already at this point. Mayor, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks very much, and thank you all for joining us. So I will just give some details about Israel response for the pandemic so far, for context, and then I will mainly talk about the Delta wave because it's the most relevant now. It's a new pandemic, so it's important point. So Israel, we had our first wave on March 2020. It was a pretty small one. At the top of the wave, we had about 700 positive cases a day at a country with 9.4 million people, and about 300 people, severe cases, hospitalized at the same time. We ended this wave around May 2020. Israel was almost zero COVID country. Because we went into a hard lockdown very, very fast, very early on March 2020. We closed the borders almost completely. And we did so many other things well. We tested a lot. We protected our elderly, we protected the elderly people in housing homes. We did PCR pooling for everybody there every like a few times a week. And we also offered test, trace, isolate, and fully paid isolation from day one. We tested asymptomatic people from day one. We offered a lot of tests from the start. And we have excellent health services. Every Israeli, when he's born, he got he got a card, a digital card. He can choose what entity he wants to supply his health services, and he can move between entities. And he got a file with everything he went through medically through all of his life, anything. And most of the treatments is free. Is not really free. I mean, it's you pay for this. We have a special health tax. But it's basically free for you. You can see, you can get any surgery, do any process, and we have a very, very good health system. So we did the first wave. We did a brilliant job. Everybody was happy. We went into hybrids. We thought that we did it the Israeli way, and we can do it again if we choose. If so, we choose. And we let the coronavirus get in to our borders, getting like around again. Second wave was much more serious. We had at the top of the second wave, we had about 9,000 cases a day in a country of 9 million people. It spread a lot. And the hospitals were like pretty strained. It was a serious situation. We went into a hard lockdown again, this time late. And it's worked, but less well than the first time, because exponential growth take a price. If you wait 2-3 weeks, you pay a dear price for it. Then we went out of the second lockdown. We did it pretty quickly, not careful. We opened up a lot and just mitigated a bit on the edges. And before we even finished the second wave, the third wave started. And this was very serious, man. It was in the winter in Israel. It started around October 2020. We already since the vaccines coming in the horizon, so the government said, okay, we will soon we will have vaccines, so we don't need to respond very fast. It was a grave mistake. We got exponential growth going up again to about 10,000-11,000 cases a day during the time where we already vaccinated people. So we had we vaccinated the population at the fastest rate in the world. We were the first and the fastest, but it was during a major outbreak, and about 1,500 Israelis died in January 2021 when we started vaccinated at the first days of December 2020. If we were only keeping the lockdown, the second lockdown for another 2 weeks, then we were able to vaccinate all of these people before they got hospitalized with a severe COVID. So we paid the price of about 2,500 Israelis, 2,500 Israelis paid with their life because we went out of a lockdown 2 weeks too early. And then again, the government of Israel, after we vaccinated a great amount of the population, we were first in the world. Together with all the kids that got infected, about 250,000 kids got infected during the first three waves, at least positive cases. From 3 million kids in Israel, we have the highest percentage of kids in the developed world. About a third of the Israeli population is kids under 18. So to get the people fully vaccinated above 12, above 16, sorry, back then it was 16, together with all the kids that got infected, gave us herd immunity against alpha. Alpha almost didn't hurt the vaccine effect against transmission, and alpha does not reinfect easily. So in general, we got into herd immunity, and we enjoyed herd immunity for about 2 or 3 months. It's probably a world record. But then Delta entered, and again, we relaxed on the borders. The government actually encouraged Israelis to fly to Dubai and other places where we just made deal pacts with, and we were not strict on the borders. Even for people that were unvaccinated, they were supposed to isolate, but nobody was really enforcing that. People were landing in Israel and taking the train back home in Modi'in and in other places. So before they even went into isolation, they went on a train. There was no mandatory testing for people coming from abroad, from certain places, from many places actually. And we had a serious outbreak from people coming back from Turkey after the Eid al-Adha, and some other people coming back from the US and other areas. And of course, soon we got Delta variant circulating in Israel. And again, besides the fact that other hibis and all of the other things, we also had 3 government changes during the 2 years of the corona. So every time we managed to do something right and we got the clock ticking, the government changed. And again, on 2021, on May 2021, we had next to 0 cases a day, positive cases a day, and we were testing heavily. And Israel was everybody felt like we are over it, and we already got to herd immunity. And then Delta came. So we had 5 to 10 cases a day, then 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. And the government didn't want to do anything. They say, okay, so it's just small numbers, and it's exponential growth. It will be bad in no time. And then everything you will try to do when you have hundreds of cases, if you do when you have 10, 20, 30 cases, it's much easier. You choose a level you want to accept of limitations that you want to accept. Anything like a green passport for vaccinated, limit gatherings in the public sector. Don't have the private sector. Limit gatherings in the public sector. Do whatever, or offer more tests in red areas. Do anything, but do it now. Don't wait another month. Do it now. The government didn't do it fast enough, and we went up to hundreds of cases a day, and then to thousands of cases a day. And the government decided to bet on booster vaccines, to give a third shot. Now, it was a very good idea because we already seen that there is waning immunity, that it's not only the effect of Delta, but also we have a waning immunity. And because of the fact that we vaccinated first in the world and vaccinated pretty fast, especially for the ages above 30, we vaccinated actually very fast. Sometimes we vaccinated 200,000 Israelis a day. It's almost 2% of it's more than 2% of the population a day. So the waning immunity also went fast, and we had nobody else to learn from because we were the first in the world to do that. So the government decided to offer booster shots first to people above 65, then above 50, then above 40, then to anybody 12 and up, half a year after the second shot, and it's worked. I mean, it saved a lot of life. Probably a friend of mine calculated that it saves the life of over 800 Israelis, but this is not enough. We lost more than 1,400 Israelis to COVID in the last 2 months after we have Pfizer vaccines available to anybody above 12 who wants them for like over half a year now, for like more than 10 months now. Everybody who wants to get a Pfizer vaccine, 1, 2, or 3 shots can get it in Israel. Everybody above 12. And we still lost more than 1,400 people in 2.5 months. And it means that vaccines are not a strategy. They're only tactics. Until you can vaccinate everybody, think worse, and you do it, and you actually do it, vaccines are only tactics and not strategy. And even when you vaccinated your whole population, and you are sure that you reached herd immunity, full herd immunity, and you are sure that you are good and you are fine, and that vaccines protect against long COVID, which we don't know yet, even then, you need to be alert for the possibility that another variant will emerge. We have seen that the white type from Wuhan, it was a pandemic with R0 of about 2 or 3. Then Alpha, the British variant, it was already a different pandemic. It's with R of 3 to 5. The Delta is already 5 to 8. When we know only from a few hundred viruses that infect people and are deadly for people and are infectious from man to man, you see human to human transmission. There are only 2 that we know that they are more infectious, more virulent than Delta. And this is measles and chickenpox. Now, if the coronavirus, if SARS-CoV-2 went from being a pretty like slow spreading virus to one of the top 3 in less than a year, then we need to really think about the possibility that it will keep on moving up. And if we will see, if SARS-CoV-2 will get like RO of 10 or 12, it already means that current vaccines will not be able to get us to herd immunity. And when we see that immunity may wane, and we see that new variants from other places that are not vaccinated yet, like Africa or huge parts of India or other areas, they will get to us. If we will not control the borders, they will get to us. And if we will not build the systems that will allow us to counter this new virus, when SARS-CoV-2 will mutate again and change again, and another variant will arise, or maybe a whole different pandemic, maybe it will be a flu, H5N6 flu, new flu strain, or anything like this, we need to be prepared. So I'm working now on trying to copycat the best responses from everywhere in the world, and only real life. I'm not trusting like ratings, international ratings. Just at the start of 2020, the US and the UK were rated the highest in the world in pandemic preparedness. You know, sorry, but anybody, please close your microphones. Thank you. So at the first months of 2020, on paper, the US and the UK were prepared the best. But then we have seen like real life. We have seen that Vietnam, for example, was like better reaction, had a much better reaction to the pandemics than the US, and that Australia was much better prepared than the UK, for example. So we need to learn from the best, and probably the best countries are probably Taiwan and New Zealand and some others in some aspects. And I think all countries, and Yanir is working on this for already, I think, over 15 years, right, Yanir? Yeah, so I think we need to learn this lesson. We were lucky enough with SARS-CoV-2 that it was relatively slow spreading, that many countries reacted in a serious manner, so we can compare like different reactions. And we may have a chance, we don't know the long-term consequences of people getting infected. And in Israel, 1 in 6 people in Israel is already PCR positive, which is very bad. But maybe we can use this to get prepared for something really bad, which may be a new variant or a new pandemic. So basically, it seems like the most important thing to remember is that you need to act fast on partial information. You need acting fast immediately is better than acting slowly and knowledgeable after a while. It's a fact. It's something. I don't think that it's need a proof anymore. It's even an axiom in pandemics. You just act fast. You can do things. You can do too much easily, and you will pay a price for doing too much. But you know the price because you did it yourself. And then you can release until you find the proper balance. But start very hard, start very early, and then release slowly until you find the place you want to be. That first. Second, you need the systems in place. Because if things that do not work in a regular time will not work in an emergency. People believe that in emergency, everybody will get like united, everybody will get behind. We put a shooter. It's not necessarily true. And if it will not happen, then you are in a serious problem. You need that people will not do things voluntarily because they are nice, because they like the way you speak. You need to have the authority in place and the responsibilities in place and the knowledge in place and the plans in the drawer and people who knows where the keys for the drawer are. In Israel, for example, we had a pandemic preparedness plan. The government, nobody in the government remember this because it was a paper from 2007. And I actually presented it to the government. I told them, you have a plan. And they were like, what plan? We have this paper. They found another paper. They found a paper with 12 pages, and I found them the paper with 200 pages. It was really ridiculous. And up till this moment, the government of Israel do not have a proper written plan. New Zealand have one, very detailed, very nice. Taiwan have one that they use the same plan since April 2020. Israel doesn't have one. So you need a plan. You need to act fast. You need responsibilities divided. You need the resources, and you also need to want to win. In Israel, for example, we allowed on June 2021, we had 260 kids positive, PCR positive. Today, we had over 500,000 PCR positive kids. This is, in my opinion, and I was doing everything in my power to prevent this from happening. In my opinion, if you fail your kids, you will fail anything. Because what is more important than protecting the next generation from a deadly virus? Nothing in this world. I can't imagine anything more important than protecting our kids from a deadly virus. I can't. And we see what this virus is doing to kids. We see kids with Alzheimer's symptoms. We see kids that are disabled. We see kids that can't concentrate, that can't do the things that they love to do, that lost the ability to sleep, to think, to write, to read. And this is something that we cannot, and we have no way to estimate the long-term impact of SARS-CoV-2. We know only the lower as a lower bar. We can only estimate the minimum impact. We have no way to estimate the maximum impact. If HIV was coming out to the world together with SARS-CoV-2 at the end of 2019, up till today, there was nobody hospitalized with HIV, nobody in the whole world, because it's only like easy flu-like symptoms for the next 6 weeks, and then nothing for another 3 years, at least 3 years. But 3 to 15 years later, everybody developed AIDS. Almost everybody, almost 100%. So I'm not saying that SARS-CoV-2 will be like this, but maybe 1% of kids infected will develop like a serious disability. In the case of Israel, it's over 5,000 kids. And if you count the cases that you missed that are not PCR positive, but we know that got infected, it's probably 10,000 to 15,000 kids on a population of 9 million. It's crazy. It's really bad. So I think that we should, in everything we do now, we should concentrate on building the institutions, building the knowledge for the next pandemic. We should not talk about like what we work for COVID. When we advocate HEPA filters in school, we need to say HEPA filters will also reduce flu, they will also reduce RSV, they will also reduce measles, they will reduce anything that will be throwing at us, and that's why we want to have them. Just the same like we have a clean sewage system in schools, we want to have HEPA filter at every class. Not because what's happening right now, that's true, but because we want to be prepared for everything and we want to protect our kids from harm. This is if you cover the doors so little kids' fingers will not get in, you also need a HEPA filter in class. It's uncivilized to have a class without HEPA filter right now, because we understood how much damage can be done to our kids in no time if we are not vigilant, if we don't care enough. And same goes for international travel. People that fly for convenience during a pandemic, they should be looked at like they're secret Smithers and go take a tour in Kidstonbury. They're endangering everybody. There is no reason to fly for a vacation in the middle of a pandemic when your health system is strained and when your government is not prepared for another surge. When you do this, you expose everybody around you for damage. And in Israel, for example, we can name the two people that started the Delta wave. We know who they are. We know that they came back from overseas. They were supposed to be in isolation, but they sent their kids to school because they didn't want them at home. So we need to advocate responsibility. We need to advocate that being careful for others is not a weakness. Being afraid of viruses when you are a human being is not a weakness. Our immune systems are amazing, but there are many things that they can't do. And if we will look at this from a community perception, we will look at this as something that we all, it's like a village to raise a kid, but it's like a whole country to protect him from a deadly virus. You cannot do this alone. It's a matter, Yanir is working a lot on encouraging communities, but the community can only do so much if the government is against it, or enough, even if it's not supportive. For example, in Israel, people wanted to use antigen tests, but they were only approved for home use 3 months ago, after a lot of pressure from many experts. For over a year, antigen tests were available around the world, but not in Israel. It's really bad. So I think that's our main lessons. And looking forward, I'm trying to raise long COVID as a serious issue. Every time I'm talking to politicians now, I'm saying, okay, so kids are not dying from COVID. There are only few cases, only few kids are dying. But this is not the point. I mean, we see kids suffering from diabetes, for example. If we could have prevented diabetes, we were doing everything we can for that. We vaccinate kids again against so many illnesses. Even though that most kids, for example, with polio, over 90% of kids with polio, we not show any symptoms whatsoever. But we vaccinate 100% of the population, even when we don't have polio outbreaks, just because we don't want 1 in 2,000 kids to get sick. So I'm telling you, can you guarantee that we will not see that 1 in 2,000 kids with coronavirus will get seriously sick? And he say, I don't know. And I say, do you know that we already have more than 1 in 2,000 severely sick? Because MIS-C alone, the multi-system inflammatory syndrome for a child, PIMS-DS, it's also called PIMS-DS. This alone, the occurrence is 1 in 2,000. So it's pretty much the same like polio with kids. 1 in 2,000 is getting disabled. And MIS-C is a disabling illness. Kids that were previously healthy, that showed, so many times they showed no symptoms, 4 to 8 weeks after they got infected with corona, they ended up in emergency room and in a critical care, many times in critical care. So we need to change this now. It changed from a pandemic of the old that are now in Israel triple vaccinated, in most of the world double vaccinated, most of the developed world. It's now the pandemic of the young. And what we need to do is to concentrate everything that we can do and do everything in our power to protect the kids until we can fully vaccinate them, which may be a matter of weeks. We probably FDA will sit on the vaccines for 5 to 11 or in 20 days from now. And it's well maybe that in Israel we will start to vaccinate kids 5 years old and up at the first week of November 2021. And the rest of the kids will probably be vaccinated by the first weeks of 2022. That should be our goal now, to protect the kids as much as possible until we can fully vaccinate them. Thank you very much. Yanir, any questions? Anybody?
Yeah, thank you, Meir. It's, I think that very, very helpful. I would like to see about some questions, and maybe before we open it up to everyone, maybe Gabriel, would you have a question for Meir?
I do. Thank you very much for that. That was really very, very interesting. Can I ask about the international relations of Israel, the connection with WHO and how that has worked, or with the Eastern Mediterranean region of WHO, how that has, or the European region? I can't remember. Israel is in one or the other. How the relationship has been with the regional office and with WHO globally, and also, are there any other countries within the general area with which you've cooperated?
Okay, so with World Health Organization, we're very close to decision makers in Israel, in the government and in the Ministry of Health and many other places. They almost never mention the WHO. They don't really use it as a reference. I'm sorry. We more looked up for approval of things. We look up for the FDA, CDC, and for example, like for best practices, we look for countries that did things that actually worked on the ground. I don't ever remember a serious like discussion in Israel around like who recommended this, who recommended that. Besides a very brief encounter at the first weeks of the pandemic, the WHO recommended that the general public will not be offered masks. And they said that this is a recommendation based on equity, because of a moral argument that if the general public will use masks, then we will be short of masks for medical teams and in other areas of the world. Now, nothing in the WHO charter or in the WHO professional background makes them better decision makers on equity or moral questions. I mean, they were supposed to say either masks are helping or not helping, or we are not sure. But the moral decisions are up to the countries to make, not to politicians to make, not to the professional health professionals from the WHO. And that was a grave mistake. I think it's broke the trust of the general public and of many professionals in the WHO, because these professionals went public and they told the public that already bought masks. Don't use them, they're ineffective. Even the WHO says that the general public should not use them. They even fed some arguments from under the ground that if you don't know how to use them, they may even prevent you they may even expose you to more virus and some other things. And once these professionals had to reverse their advice and actually tell the general public to wear masks, while these videos of them saying that masks are useless aired again and again, it's hurt them. They didn't want to quote the WHO again, and they didn't. They just didn't. With regard to other countries, so early on, Israel were the Prime Minister Netanyahu back then. We're talking with countries like the UK, Austria, mainly Europe, and this was a grave mistake because apparently the countries that reacted best were actually in the Pacific. So if you only had a better relation with New Zealand, Taiwan, or Australia, I guess we were in a different place now. But we were actually trying to teach Austria and the UK about our best practices. And from being so generous with the world, showing how we are so successful, we missed up on our own battle, and we got to one in every 6 Israelis infected.
Meir, can I ask one more question, please? And that is about, you mentioned equity, and equity within Israel and the occupied territories. How did the country manage to deal with equity in terms of the sharing vaccine and interventions between the population, including the Palestinian population and that in the occupied territories?
So best, we don't call it the occupied territories. We call it the West Bank or Yehuda and Samaria. Anyway, according to the Oslo Accords, the PLO is responsible for all health matters. They have their own like CDC and FDA. They approve their own vaccines. They do anything in their it's their business. I mean, we didn't block anything from coming into their area. They can buy anything, sell anything, administer anything. It's up to them. They did few lockdowns. They got a lot of equipment for us. We gave them a huge amount of tests. We gave them ECMO machines. We gave them a huge amount of PPE and many other things since day one. And they also contain in the Israeli borders. So we actually protected their borders as well as we protected ours, at least. We also offered them vaccines. Israel, there were a time in the pandemic that Israel vaccinated more Arabs than the whole of the more than billion Arab population around the world combined. I mean, there are, I think, 30 or 40 Arab nations around the world. Israel vaccinated more Arabs than all these nations combined. Okay, so we actually offered them a vaccine pretty early on, Moderna vaccines, good ones, for free. And later, we even offered them exchange of Pfizer vaccine to give them a month enough.
You just lose, Meir? Froze.
Find a very urgent deal with South Korea in a very bad terms. We lost a lot of money on this one because they declined the vaccines at the last second. Because they wanted to show like they don't need Israel, they can go by themselves. We helped them with everything possible. They got anything they asked for. So I don't know, from terms of from an equity point of view, I don't think they can like anticipate anything more than that. I don't think that any country in the world did better for any other like area, part of it or not part of it.
Meir, there are a couple of other questions.
Yes.
So there are a few questions in the chat. One of them may or may not be one that you can answer. The question is, Naftali Bennett warned of this processes on the Community Action Summit that we actually ran in January, February, where he spoke. Mm-hmm. What is he saying now? He is Prime Minister now. Can he influence things to better?
Okay, so I think what happened to Prime Minister Bennett was that we have been in herd immunity. Israel reached herd immunity. It's clear as a day. We've been there for a few months, but it was against Alpha. And I think as the Prime Minister was confused, he thought that because we reached herd immunity, we will probably not see a serious outbreak. Doesn't matter how many mistakes we are making or how much we leave the economy open. So he pretty much said, I'm betting everything on vaccines and hope that the herd immunity will last until we get approval for the vaccines for the kids. And then we can just move on with our life regardless of the pandemic. It was a grave mistake. And when you make such a mistake with something that grows exponentially, especially as fast as Delta, then the price of your bet is like doubling. Every 2 weeks, you double the bet. Because people are dying, people are getting infected, and now the price to get back to like acceptable levels with the coronavirus zero or next to zero is doubling, and more than doubling. Because, for example, when you have only a few hundred cases, positive cases a day, then test, isolate is very effective. Please close your microphones. And in Israel, we have an excellent system of test, trace, and isolate. At the peak, we've been able to test 200,000 Israelis with PCR daily. On a population of 9 million, we tested 200,000 people daily. Okay, it's crazy. Besides like quick tests and everything else, and pooling testing in schools and many other things. But nothing can stop. Nothing man-made can stop exponential growth with RO of 5 to 8. It's simply, I mean, you cannot reinforce your health system against something like this. You cannot like expand your testing capacity to get something like this. It's simply impossible unless you get like you test everyone in the population, and then it's of course you will not have this exponential growth from the first place. So
Meir,
it got these mistakes that we have a margin of error, and we didn't, because Delta is a different pandemic, and we paid the price of it. Almost 15,000 1,500 Israelis paid the ultimate price, and other like tens of thousands are disabled now from this like mistake. And I hope that we learn for the next round, and that you don't play with fire. If you have like 7 multiples as a margin of error, use only the first one, maybe the second one, but no more than that. You don't want to bet on the next 5 like doubles, because you end up with people like with doctors choosing who to connect to ECMO, even though that in Israel we have like triple the amount of ECMO machines per population than the UK.
Meir, there's another question from someone on the YouTube stream. They just want to know what was the vaccine used by Israel, what was the interval between the doses, and how do you understand the effect of the dosage interval?
Okay, so in Israel, we used, most of the time we used Pfizer vaccines. I think over 90% of the vaccines administered in Israel are Pfizer. We also used Moderna. On a Pfizer vaccine, the interval was 3 weeks. And whenever you got the first shot, you will also schedule the second shot right on spot. So most people got them with exactly 3 weeks, or like plus minus 4 days to each direction, but 3 weeks from between the shots. With Moderna, it's 4 weeks, as per the instructions of Moderna. And in a hindsight, it seems like countries that talk a longer interval are faring better. Now, I didn't see yet a research showing this clearly with a control group and whatever to show that it's actually the effect of a different interval between the vaccines. But from a general view, it seems like a longer interval is better. We also offered a shot to anybody that recovered from corona. More than at least with a wait of 3 months. Like if you were PCR positive, 3 months later you can get a shot of Pfizer or Moderna shot, whatever you choose. And we offered a third shot to anybody above 12 and more than 6 months after the second shot. And the third shots are working like a charm. I mean, for that we have a very clear information. People who got the third shot are protected better than people who got a second shot just after they got the shot, even though this is against Delta, which is much more dominant than Alpha back then. And they're not only protected better, they're protected not only from severe illness, they're also protected very well against transmission. The chances that a person that is vaccinated with a third shot will get infected and transmit to others are about like 10% of the chance of somebody that were fully vaccinated, like with 2 shots 6 months ago. So we see that even if what you try, I mean, the protection of the fully vaccinated against severe becoming sick as a severe case is above 90%. With even people that vaccinated 6 months ago, but they are getting infected much more often. So if you already got infected, the protection is like above 90%. But for people that got a third shot, they're getting infected less, and they transmit less. So the overall protection of the population is much better when you vaccinate with a third shot. Now there is one open question here. Everything that we know about the safety of the third of the boosters came from Israel, because we were the first to administer the third shot. So we took a huge bet with like very wide population. We offered this booster shot to people 12 and up. It's a serious risk. I mean, I think everybody in the profession, from the professionals in the health ministry, everybody was preferring it much if we were controlling the Delta outbreak in some other measures, waiting for other countries to learn the lesson, use booster shots, see the safety profile. approve it in the FDA, and just saying we were using it as a security measure, just like because we want to be better prepared, and not to actually try to control a Delta outbreak with boosters, which is very dangerous. And also, of course, we lost the life of over 1,400 people that we will probably be able to save if we were vaccinated them with a search shot early enough.
Okay, Meir, we are over time. Usually we run only for about 25 minutes, but this has been very interesting. I think that while there are a couple more questions, I think we should thank Meir and we can keep more informal conversation, which we do after our regular daily call.